So welcome to the APT Construction Podcast. We have Mr. Brady Fry with us today. Welcome, Brady.
Long time listener, first time caller.
In all these couple years of doing this, the first time I've had someone present themselves this way. That's classic, and it couldn't be better from Fry Classic Construction over here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, Brady. Brady and I go quite a ways back. As you know, with many of our guests, we've been friends on Instagram for a while. However, I've been to your operation there in Nashville, seen your products, seen your projects. Super amazed. You've been here to Phoenix. We've even snuck out golfing when you were here. So
Yes.
it's long overdue that we've had you on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with this. I know we spent a lot of time off air, you and I, just discussing business and, sharing how we run things and just, little insights to doing what we do. But one thing that's always intrigued me about you, Brady, is, you have this philosophy is get paid to plan. What's that?
Yeah, it's interesting, Brad, and we identify in the construction industry, we kind of adopt this craftsman's mindset, and we don't really identify ourselves the same way other professionals in other industries do. A lot of times we kind of hang out and think that, we don't actually get paid until a project happens. And, when I'm talking to young builders and they're going, oh man, when did things change for you? Or when did things start heating up? Or what was the big connection that you made that kind of changed everything? Without hesitation, I immediately say the pre-construction agreement. Now, I even sometimes change how I label the pre-construction agreement. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it pre-construction, but any professional has a professional services agreement. In our industry, by the time we're involved in a job, the architect already has an agreement, the engineers have an agreement, the interior designers have an agreement, the landscape architects have an agreement, and when we're attending meetings, they're being paid. We're typically the only people that are sitting there free. And so I really think this unlocks a lot of things in business, and I'll try to articulate those to you because there's a lot of different levels to this. One, the best customers expect to pay for service. You actually elevate your perception in the marketplace when you require people to pay for your time. So the best customers, are really respond to this. Even in industries, we assume sometimes that the fee for service actually gives us better service. So if you were interviewing a lawyer and he said, hey man, I'm $800 an hour, and you talk to another lawyer and they're $200 an hour, you actually may associate better legal representation with a more expensive product. And so I think that we elevate ourselves in the mind of our customers.
It's interesting. Before you get to point two, to break that down, Brady, I love that analogy with the legal counsel because there is some truth there that, there may be some clients that say, hey, I can't afford the 800, I'm going to 200. Totally makes sense, right? However, there is some truth there that at $800, there's experience, there's talent, there's network, there's company organization behind them. I mean, there's a lot of things that the reason they can charge that. And to your point, I remember speaking with some remodelers and early in my career, especially, doing remodels and, we're not doing really any right now. I mean, we have a couple, but on the large scale, but where I'm getting at is that I know remodel companies, when they have the leads call in, they'll say, yeah, I'll come, but there's a fee, right? Here's my fee to come out and bid or meet with you. And really what ends up happening is you start attracting the ideal client, which is what you're speaking, Brady, is that now if you're charging them for that trip charge, essentially to come out there, they're skin in the game. They want to participate. They value that. And that's how you start really fine tuning that client base.
Absolutely. It creates an element of scarcity. Hey, my time's valuable. I can't just give it away because it's limited. It also activates, I've noticed it activate this part of the brain. It's why sometimes we're attracted to people that aren't attracted to us in our personal relationships. We all like the girl who wouldn't pay any attention to us. And then maybe there was somebody who was interested in us and we weren't that interested in. So when somebody doesn't put all their cards on the table, it just activates that part of their brain that says there's value here, there's scarcity. One of the analogies that I like to mention, hey, if somebody called 3 architects and they call one architect and they say, hey, I would like to email you a set of plans and I'd like to see if you could get back to me in a couple of weeks with a budget. The first contractor says, absolutely, I'll have it to you in 2 weeks, and has a similar phone call with the same contractor. Second contractor, they have the identical conversation. Yeah, I'd love to. I'll have it to you in 2 weeks. And they call you or I or somebody who has a professional service agreement in place and say, hey, I'd be happy to kind of find out a little bit more about your project. But before I really can spend any meaningful time, it has to be, we have to come to a professional services agreement. Brad, it drives people crazy. I've never seen anything like it. Like what does this guy know that they don't know? It's a great magnet. It just activates that same part of the brain, like I say, that we realize in personal relationships. It's just an amazing tool. Also, you're talking about finding your ideal client. This is what it does. You're never going to get a good job with a good budget if you're competitive bidding. If you're just papering your town with free estimates, you're usually competing on price, and you're never going to get the best work if that's the basis for your competition. And I would say, you and I both kind of work at kind of the higher ends of the market. Price isn't our client's number one value system anyway. So why would we lead with that? It's probably 3 or 4 on my client's list. So why'd my price be my, tip of the spear, my value proposition? But it's just hard to do that if they're trying to, get 3 or 4 bids and then create some kind of Frankenstein estimate from the, most favorable numbers in each cost category on documents that aren't standardized. So this is really key to finding the best clients.
Well, it's interesting to that point, Brady. I mean, when you were talking about skin in the game and how not only for the client, but it puts us on that side. And I'll give one example here. Early in my career, again, I had a client that was at the time looking at bidding out with a couple of GCs, and he was a friend of mine. He wasn't doing a project with us, just it was out of state. And so he said, Brad, it's interesting. He said, I had 2 GCs, kind of just pure example, Brady, that I asked them to give a bid. They said, no problem. The third guy said, I'm going to charge you 10 grand for the bid. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's interesting. He said, I actually like that they actually cared enough to ask, because now I know they're vested. And you look at it from our side, for us, we charge our clients for a bid if that's the case, because there's a lot of time that goes into that. But the value there for the client is that if I'm being paid to present a proposal, I'm not going to wing it. I'm not just going to look at my database, especially now as cost fluctuates. Like there's some R&D, there's some, a lot of background work with our vendors and scope and diagnostics and Bluebeam and other things we're using. So then that way the client that's investing in us, we're paying that forward to them. Yeah,
you're absolutely on the right track on that. And I just think, these are the fundamental things. I was at my Builder 20 group, and when everyone's going through talking about what's new and we're all catching up, everyone goes around the table, and most people universally said, oh man, I can't even handle all the phone calls. There's too many phone calls. And I said, oh man, you guys really, how many of you guys are using pre-construction agreements or professional services agreements? And I think almost none. And I'm like, guys, if you're too scared to do it now, like this is the filter. This is what's going to kind of sift through these, huge numbers of phone calls that you're struggling to manage and identify the best clients. And they go, what? You can't do that in my market. And I would argue that would be the best market. I mean, if everybody in your market's doing it, it's even harder to differentiate. It become customary. If nobody's doing it, even better. How much easier is it to differentiate yourself if nobody's doing it versus everybody's doing it? So I would look at it, go, that's a perfect time. It's harder if everybody's doing it. You got to find some other, playing field to kind of differentiate yourself from some of your competitors or other people that might be appropriate for that job. So even better, if they're not doing it in your market, you really need to do it.
So speaking of that, is there a number? Is there a baseline? Is there a target, where builders should be looking at this, to work on that agreement, depending on the duration with the client? Is it an hourly? Is it a set fee?
Well, we usually just have a fee, and we've been slowly kind of ramping that up. Probably a lot of people that are listening to your podcast, some of these people are in design build companies where they're actually producing drawings. We're actually more of just professionally consulting at that point. This may lead us into a little bit different conversation, but one thing that I've eliminated from my professional services agreement is I used to say I had the word estimating was one of the services that we were going to provide as part of that pre-con. I've eliminated that. I'm not agreeing to estimate. I'm agreeing to provide a budget consultation. So, you can tailor the buffet of services and the associated fees for whatever you want. Mine are mostly 15,000, is a number. Our contract says, if we sign a construction agreement, then, we'll credit this to the job, but it's not required. You've done professional work. If you didn't want to do that, I think that's fine. We typically do it. It also says if we incur any expenses in producing samples or engineering or site visits, we can bill for those at our rate. So it's not limited. There's services that you can bid on, but we're not really doing anything creative at that point. I've kind of started to change my message a little bit. A lot of the things that we talk about offline is how important communication is. And people think of communication as timing of the communication. Is I called somebody back immediately, or I'm really quick with communication, and they're missing out on what are the value of the words they're communicating, and how are they using those values to create an opportunity to succeed. Not just, I call this guy back quickly, or I'm Johnny on the spot, but what words are you saying? What's the language in your agreement, and how does that identify your best customer and give you a scenario? I always talk about the wide lane to succeed. I want a wide lane to succeed. I don't want to perch success on the head of a pin. So let's communicate in a way that gives us a wide lane to succeed. And so in that professional service agreement, you can really kind of tailor it. I've kind of changed the message in that agreement, where I used to say the purpose of my professional service agreement, Brad, was to secure that great job that I wanted to me. So I would say that person, I was trying to get that job off the street. I didn't want that bouncing around and one of my competitors or somebody go, oh man, I hear this great job going around over there. So I was trying to secure that job to me. I've kind of changed my communication in my professional services agreement. Now I say, hey guys, I can tell you based on the number of inquiries I'm getting, all these houses aren't getting built. They're not getting built. There's not enough qualified contractors. So either some projects are not going to get built, or they're going to get built by contractors that may not be qualified to produce that level of work. When you sign this professional services agreement, I am allocating time on my calendar to build your project. So now I've even reversed the psychology. Instead of saying, hey, I want to get this great job off the street, I'm telling people, hey, you need to get me off the street. I'm getting more calls on houses I can build. So if you want to get me off the street, you better sign this agreement, or your job isn't accounted for in my calendar.
So that's fantastic, Brady. And let me ask you this. I mean, that example you gave where we need to be creating a wide lane for success, not just the tip of a pen. I mean, it's a great analogy there. But, as you approach clients and they're, for lack of a better word, cold calling you or reaching out to you, Brady, how often do they push back? Do they push back saying, hey, I'm hesitant to sign a PSA. I'm hesitant to just get on board with one contractor, because this time will tell that I have to have 3 bids or whatever. I mean, how do you navigate through that conversation with the client?
Shockingly, very little. That's why I'm surprised, because, when I'm a little older than some of my peers. And so some of the young builders, particularly in my Builder 20 group, call me and, oh, Brady, how did you do this? And I go, things that you're so stressed out about and you think aren't available to you, or you go, man, that's not available in my market, I have almost zero conversations about. I have one of my great employees I've hired in the last year. He's a general contractor. He was out on his own, and he's been an awesome hire for me. And he had a couple leads that he was still working when they came to me. When he started, working for me full time, and he said, hey, I want you to meet some of these leads. And I said, Jason, I need to be clear. I'm offering a professional services agreement, or I'm not wasting 1 minute on it. And I could see the anxiety on his face, because he had been spinning his wheels for 6 months with these people. He felt this relationship, and he's going, man, Brady's getting ready to go in and maybe, ice this thing out a little bit, or, make it uncomfortable for him because he had this relationship he had and this rapport that he'd built, and he felt like I was going to jeopardize it. I said, hey guys, man, Jason's such an awesome addition to my team. I'm glad to have him here. I need to tell you a little something about how we work. Other than this brief interview, we can't spend any meaningful time without a professional services agreement. Here you go. If you'd like for us to start, consulting you. They wrote a check at the table, and he was so stressed. It was a zero for them. They understood it. They probably wondered why he had been spending 6 months and hadn't requested, any money for his time. So the hurdle is very low. Anybody who's reluctant to do it, after you do it and you see the results, Brad, I couldn't get work when I was giving away free work. It's counterintuitive. And people who go, I don't have any work, I can't afford to do that. You're getting more incoming phone calls than you can manage. I wasn't when I started doing this. I was not. And it took a lot of courage. A couple of times, you can imagine, I got invited to a meeting with an architect. And I thought, man, this architect, I've got my professional services agreement here, but I'm afraid that they're going to be like, man, I invite Brady to this meeting. Now he's immediately shaking down my customer for money. And I just assumed they would be adverse to it. But I said, you know what? I've kind of planted my flag. This is how I operate. I said, hey, I need to let you know kind of where we go from here. If you want to continue this conversation, I'd love to. Here's my professional services agreement. And afterwards, I was kind of, having the debriefing with the architect. He goes, man, I love it. Do you think I want to sift through 5 bids? They go out and get a bunch of bids, and then who do they want to sift through them? Me.
Yep.
Like, great. Get them saddled up with you. I know you'll deliver. So again, don't assume that your architects or people that refer you, and if they are, again, you're not asking them to work free.
I love
Can you
that.
imagine Brad calling one of your architect partners and saying, hey man, I got this great job for you. I need you to design. I'm going to have 5 architects design a house, a schematic. We like schematic design and a fee schedule for 5 architects, and then we're going to pick one.
And the reality is, look, they're being paid. There's value that the architect and designer are bringing, the landscape architect, and they're being paid for those services. They're involved. Do you, how, I don't want to say in the weeds, but how much do you define scope, or what does it entail? If I'm a customer coming to you, Brady, saying, okay, I'm signing a pre-construction, I totally get it, 15 grand, 25 grand, no problem. I understand the time. Is there a certain amount of hours you're including? Is it pretty open to say, hey, throughout the, pre-con phase?
It's pretty open, and because we're applying it to the job, they're not in incredible jeopardy by paying that fee. It's essentially a prepayment. And imagine, Brad, if there's a product or a service that we intend to buy, we'd have no problem. Imagine, the vehicle market's pretty tight. You want to go buy a new truck, and you call your dealer and you say, hey man, I want one of those new pretty Ford F-150 limiteds like Brad has. That thing's pretty sharp. You get these, oh man, those are hard to get. It's going to take you 7 months to get one of those. And he goes, great, yeah, go ahead and order it. He goes, hey, these are in such short supply, I need you to write a $10,000 deposit. If you wanted the truck, you'd go, no problem. Now, if all you wanted to do was get a quote on price so you could call another dealer, then you would start hedging, wouldn't you? But if you intend to buy the truck, what do you care about paying 10 grand for?
Yep.
It makes you, this is important, Brad. It makes them tell you what they're not telling you. As soon as you ask for money, if you're just price checking another quote they received, they have to either move on or go, hey, well, actually, my roommate in college is a builder, but he doesn't quite have the experience that you have. Now, if they would tell me that, Brad, I might still be willing to go, hey, why don't you pay me $1,500 and I'll spend 3 hours and I'll give you my critique of their proposal. But I'm not going to go spend a month of my time free if we haven't established, they're not being truthful with me. If that job's not really available, they're not telling me the truth, and I'm not agreeing to engage in that process because I don't have the facts. But they have to tell you. They're not going to do that the second you ask for money. So it makes them tell you what they're not telling you.
Yeah, I love that. And I love earlier in the conversation, just a couple minutes ago, you had mentioned that, even with the architects, you had a little bit of fear, the architects bringing you in and you're bombarding the client, right, with documentation to get started. But the architect likes that. And what I found too, especially with a lot of the, the caliber of architects and designers we're working with, they're preaching the same thing. They're like, look, for us to design appropriately within budget, and we need the builder on board to consult with, for architectural reasons, for interior design purposes. There's so many things that the builder has to know or sign off on or say, yeah, this is feasible or within the budget, because at the end of the day, like, we're responsible for that, right? We're the steward of the client's investment there. And so, being that you're involved early, how has that changed your relationship in pre-con with the design team? How, not only in pre-con, but how does that now constitute the success of the project moving forward once you break ground?
Good question. I talk about this wide path to success, and I think a lot of times, even when you use the term pre-con or estimate or budget, Brad, we feel like that we have to answer questions earnestly and in the form that they were presented. So, for instance, we get the question all the time, "Hey, Brad, what does it cost to build per square foot in your market?"
Right. Yeah.
And usually, what people do now. There could be a range of answers. We did this at my Builder 20. And guys, two things were generally happening with people, Brad. There's a group of people that said, every house is different, and I'm saying nothing. Okay? And then there's another group of people that were thinking about their last project, how many square feet it was, getting out their calculator on their phone. What I'm saying is, divorce yourself from the number. You think you have to do the math and deliver a number based on the way that question was presented to you. And what I'm saying is, when you strategically answer that number in a way that makes it easy for you to succeed. This is a little bit, I haven't attended any formal sales training, but this is a concept that I learned from Sean Van Dyke. Sean's a great guy. You and I both know him. Sean's done some coaching for me, and it's a concept called anchor pricing. Well, we all anchor our price, but some of us anchor our price low and we drown. We anchor the price too low, and these jobs get stuck, and then we end up managing all the disappointment and rebudgeting and re-reporting. Well, why don't you just anchor your price high? Don't worry about what the price per square foot was on the job that you just completed, even if it was under similar circumstance. If you're building in Silverleaf and somebody bought the lot next door, so it was a similar house and very similar conditions, and they asked you what that was, price per square foot, you're not required to answer based on what the square footage was for the neighboring house. You can answer that. You can anchor that price, deliberately anchor it high to give yourself an opportunity to succeed.
That's phenomenal.
And that's what you should do.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I've never heard that term anchor pricing, right? Is a higher low. And the reality is, because at times, the funny thing is, and we're all this way, right? That when we'll meet with the client, and even if they're interviewing you, Brady, and saying, okay, what's the budget? And you're trying to help them or give them, a database based on other projects you have, they always hear the low price, not the high one. Yes. You may say, I could be at, 300 a foot to 700 foot, whatever that is. They're going to hear 300 and be like, what is happening? So we get into design. But to your point, it's really, this goes back to really a successful relationship is setting good expectations. And so if you're anchored and realistic, especially with how the market can fluctuate, then it puts you in a better position where you're not, not in a tough position where you can't perform.
But think about the strategy, not the answer. I talk about this all the time. In terms of how we communicate, what's the strategy? We always think about what the answer is or what the data is. And I'm saying you have to separate your mind and go, what response helps identify my ideal client and allows me to get to the finish line and, be sitting there popping the cork on the champagne, getting the hugs and the tears when the wife moves in. She's so overjoyed to see this dream manifested. And there's ways that you can do that. And so one of the dialogues that I have, Brad, and I don't even mind sharing it with you, and some people that use me might even hear this, and it's all fine. People will go, Brady, what does it cost to build in your market? We did, again, another exercise we did at our Builder 20. And I go, about $750 a square foot plus about 30% above that for landscapes, hardscapes, and drainage. Brad, do you know how many houses I've built for $750 a foot? Zero. Zero. Some people immediately go, oh man, we're way off. So the question I'm always asking myself with my communication, now imagine that we set a number. So Brad, let's say in your market, you said 300. You'd go, Everybody's going to hire Brad at 300. The problem is you can't build everybody's house. Well, an equally big problem would be if you had a number that nobody would take, right? So two problems can happen. Everybody's a big problem and nobody's a problem. So our communication should be tailored at identifying somebody, not nobody and not everybody. And so I have plenty of people that I'll say that number. I don't go, oh, the last one I finished was about 550. The last one I finished, Brad, was about 550.
Right.
That's not the communication, because what I'm trying to do is use my communication to identify my ideal client and give me a wide path to success. If I finish that, they've already continued the conversation at 650. Also, at the higher price points, they're trying to validate, it's really not about the price. It's really more about the expectation. A person, there's no $10 million mortgage. There's no $20 million mortgage. So these people are having the conversations they've got the money. They're trying to decide how much of it they want to apply to this job. And so use that communication and think strategically, kind of divorce yourself from what the number is and think about how you can communicate to get to the finish line and create that wide lane of success to the finish line. And I battle that some internally. My estimating and purchasing department here argues with me all the time because all they want to know is what the number is. I go, stop thinking about the number. Stop thinking about the number. Let's set some expectations where we can be successful.
So it's interesting. And for as long as I've known you, something that you're big on is communication, of course, and, strategic communication. So is this what you define? I've heard you use that term before, strategic communication. Is it in regard to, just pricing and vetting clients as it has to do like during the duration of the build?
It's regarding everything. It's regarding everything. What if you walk on a job site and your client says, hey man, Brad, how was your weekend? Is the most important thing they want to know how your weekend is? They're just being conversational. What if you thought, well, what are their needs? What do they really want to know about? You go, man, I had a great weekend, spent some time with the kids, but man, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't wait to get back over here on Monday. Does that uplift your client? Do they really want to know how your kid's soccer game went? They don't. So why don't you strategically, they're being nice. They're being polite.
Totally. But I understand the context. Yeah.
What if you just you started thinking, well, hey, how can I turn this to talk about what they want to talk about? Or make them think, hey man, anything for you. You're my number one client. You're my number one client. They're all my number one clients because I love them. I want to deliver for them. So I think we get really casual with things. I saw your, I think you had a little reel with some of the common questions that we get all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Construction.
Yeah.
And so, a while back, you and I were on what was it? Hey, by the way, what's that app that, the chat app that was out?
Oh yeah.
Which
Clubhouse. Clubhouse.
Is that still a thing?
Yeah, Clubhouse.
I was like, oh, Brad's doing Clubhouse. It must be cool. I'll find out what this is. And I jumped into Clubhouse, and we were getting that old question of, well, hey, if I change the scope or I decide I want to spend more money, do I have to pay your markup? And the person that was kind of monitoring that conversation went into this big extended conversation about warranty and all that. I go, hey, man, the answer is really simple. We have a cost plus agreement. And so I can say things, you can say things, some of the things I might even share here, you go, Brady, that sounds kind of snarky. What's the response that you get? But, imagine, we start these projects. I'm a cost plus builder. I think you're doing more cost plus work now, but we'll get 2/3 the way through the project. And what's the question we get 2/3 the way the contract through the process, the project? How much is it going to cost to finish? And I go, I can tell you. And they look, you can tell me. And I go, yeah. All the costs plus our markup, exactly like it was. Now, that might sound snarky, Brad. I say it with a smile on my face. I kind of use a little bit of personality and humor. But what I'm saying is
Southern charm.
Sign an agreement. We sign an agreement. Now, what did I do? Like you, I'm a little bit more detached from all the day-to-day stuff. But when I was the one-man superhero, I was going back to my office. I was spending 30 hours trying to monitor what agreements were partially paid and try to create this number. And so what was I doing? I was taking a cost plus agreement, and I was converting it to a fixed price. Why? Why would I do that? Why would I? So then what would happen is I'd project a number. Hey, based on this 20 hours I spent analyzing your numbers, it's 250,000. Then it comes in at 275 or whatever the number is. And then they think they're being gracious. They go, well, I'm going to pay the 250, but I can't pay that 25. I'm not paying it. Because you said expectation. Why did you convert your cost plus job to a fixed cost job 80% of the way through the job? Just remind them. I can tell you exactly. I can say, hey, the best information I have, if you look at your co-construct, your budget, it's not perfect, but that's the best. We try to keep it up to date, but that's probably the best information I can give you right now. But, just remind them, hey, we're on a cost plus agreement. Why would you negotiate yourself? Same conversation that the day after you get that conversation, when are we going to get done? When are we going to get done?
And then you're setting timelines, which maybe you can complete or not. And the schedule one is really important because the fine line there as a builders, building custom homes in the market we're in, and it doesn't matter if it's right now where it's a little hectic to build a house or years past, there's still a lot of work that goes into finishing a project. And we have to be sensitive that the clients may be selling a home or maybe relocating or they may be in a rental month to month. Understand, right? But we should at least say, look, within 60 days, then we can give you a final number, or maybe it's at a certain stage. And the reason I'm a lot more reluctant now, and not reluctant, I mean, we communicate and we have look aheads and we still have a goal. Like before I give my example here, Brady, is that we have a client right now that's a 2-year build. They're from the Midwest and he's strategizing. We sat down and we said, look, client, our goal is next March, you're going to be done. And I think it's achievable. I think we're going to get there. But, understand the high level here that we're not, this isn't hold our feet to the fire based on what we're tracking. We're a year into this. We have a year left. We're ahead of schedule. We're looking good, but you never know, right? But that's a goal line. So it's not like we're just leaving in dark. However, to make a client happy, we had a client, pretty well-known client here in town. And he had an issue at his house. We came in to help fix it. It was a big issue, an insurance claim. We came to fix it, and he was kind of stressed because of the insurance claim. Long story short, we tried to be the heroes. He's like, hey, I want to be in by Christmas. We committed to be in by Christmas, and I shouldn't have done it because then now we became the enemy the whole time. And it was just a deadline that we couldn't complete, and there's just no way, and it really became tense with that client. And how do I sat back and said, look, I understand you want to be in Christmas, but based on the start date, based on when insurance approvals came in, cabinetry could be made, all these things. We have milestones here. We're not going to be done. And really it goes back to your statement of strategic communication is that we really set it up for failure because we weren't upfront with him. But
what if you communicated early? We made a company-wide policy. We do no move-ins between Thanksgiving and New Year's.
Exactly. And that's an SOP thing. And that's really where we're at now. I mean, and I love that you said that, Brady, because every company should do that. I know for designers, it's a little bit more difficult because there may be furnishings and end of year stuff. But for us builders, we strategically don't try to close anything between Christmas or Thanksgiving and New Year's. Because it's impossible.
Designers are relieved. Be honest with you, I think they appreciate that we kind of dove on that grenade, so they didn't have to because they want to say that, but maybe they lack the candor or confidence to draw that line. And we go, hey, listen, we all have families, and again, market conditions might change, and somebody might say, hey, you get one lead every 6 months, and you got to have that job. And somebody says, hey, here's the deal, I'll hire you, but I might be moving in Christmas Eve. You might alter your policy based on the market conditions. But right now, when there's a scarcity of qualified builders, I think that you can identify the kind of the rules that you're going to play by. And we have families as well. I mean, you've got a big family, you got young kids. Last thing you want to be doing is stressing out your wife and your family and not be present because, somebody's trying to get in. It's your holiday too. That's what I say. People go, hey man, can you do this during spring break? I'm like, well, it's our spring break too,
Yeah.
And so, I think again, if you communicate that the right way, they ultimately get it.
They do. And what you said here, I think the most valuable thing too, Brady, is really it's best practice. And what that means is that we all have our operating procedures. Hey, we're not closing any project, Thanksgiving and New Year's. We're not going to bid a project unless we have a PSA. Or, but that's best practice. But there are occasions where we may say, okay, on a special circumstance, or, then we may apply that, but we should still have some baseline as a company, our SOP, our standard operating procedures that we live and die by, that are best practice. And on occasion, we may step out of that boundary for a special, unique thing, but we have to be cautious in how many times we do that.
That should be rare, or it's not a SOP.
Yeah. Right.
It should be rare. It doesn't mean never, but it should be rare, And so one thing that I would say, Brad, that you mentioned, I just feel like you should never negotiate against your agreement. You should never put yourself in a weaker position after the contract is signed. And so we had a great project. And if you look at my Instagram, it's this beautiful house I finished. Homeowners are hugging me, wife's crying, dream manifest, everything's great. Love these people. So we still ended up finishing great. I have a personal relationship with them outside of building, but I made a mistake, and I didn't communicate strategically because I let my guard down a little bit because of the personal relationship. And man, like the stars all kind of aligned when we were getting this job out of the ground. This is before lumber was impossible to get, windows were impossible to get. So it's a little bit less challenging part. Well, my framer, this house was so big and had 3 big sections, and he had like a hole in his workforce. And he bought 3 crews. One crew framed the main part of the house, floor to ceiling. The other crew framed these large wings. I had 4 months on the calendar to frame this house. These guys framed it in like 31 days. It was insane. They
Amazing.
just killed it for me. And I said to my client, I said, we're killing it. We're killing it. This is just going so good. And he goes, really, what do you think? I go, I'm going to be done early. I'm going to be done early. I'm going to be done by the end of the year next year. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. I had my contract April 22nd. I had 24 months. By the way, just something to mention, Brad, in your contract language, set a date. Don't have the date of the clock starts be the date you get permits, the day you sign the contract. Put something that's related to the actual production, because so many times we have a permit or we sign a contract, but there's something the architect hasn't delivered, something that eats 3 months out of our contracts. These long projects that you and I have, they don't remember that 2 years. So right. I would say for mass excavation, have the start date of your contract and the clock starts at mass excavation or excavation. So the clock doesn't start till this job started in earnest. And so if there's something that prohibits that, permitting, design, don't give up 3 months. Don't start 3 months behind. So anyway, so I had till April 22nd of 2022 to finish this project. Well, I just gave myself a 4-month haircut. And honestly, it was unfair to the project manager. It was unfair. I made it tough for him to succeed. Here's a guy killing it. And the homeowners are great. I love them. They were so great to us, Brad. I don't want to say anything that makes it sound like they were tough or unreasonable. They weren't. They were just excited. They wanted to get in their house. They wanted to get in by Christmas and they couldn't. We got in January. But imagine if I just had said, I thought a little bit more strategically. Mm-hmm. And when he said, well, how long is it going to take? I go, 100% of the contract, maybe longer. I'm never going to give up a day that's in the contract. It may require more. So strategically, there's 2 answers. Ask Brady or all the time that's in the contract and maybe more. Those are the only 2 answers. Everything else is, because it's again, allowing me to be successful. I deprived my project manager of 4 months that he could have utilized. I could have still got him in early. And it been, oh man, great. We're in 2 months early and still giving him another month, so I just really don't believe that you should, in the middle of a project, create an agreement lesser than the one that you agreed to before the job started.
Yeah, that's such sound advice, Brady. So how do you, I know you have a lot of experience. You've been doing this for quite some time. And so it really helps as you kind of learn the mistakes, the issues, really communicate with clients as strategic communication. But the reality is, despite that, you still have conflict. You still have, tough conversations, the anxiety of having these, this communication. What do you recommend to prepare for tough questions? What do you recommend, for a client that is upset or irate, just as, how do you bridge that with the client?
Well, there's a few things I do. If I know I'm going into a tough conversation, the first thing I do, Brad, is I mentally kind of galvanize myself and I say, don't get angry. Like no matter what happens, like I can't get angry because sometimes these things get passionate, particularly if the homeowner starts getting angry, and so first of all, if you're right, why are you angry? And, I have this saying, Brad, you and I both like to golf. In business and in golf, the first person that gets angry usually loses. So if you're playing a little bet with your buddy and he's chucking his driver on the third tee, oh, how glorious! I'm getting ready to win. We got 15 holes to play. This guy's already mad. By the way, Brad, I might be chucking my driver on the third.
I'm going to see how mad you get in Nashville when I'm out there.
Yeah. But if you can just maintain that composure and that professional, hey, if you're wrong, just say you're wrong. Go, you know what? Don't be afraid to say you're wrong. It immediately takes all the emotion out of the conversation. Say, you know what? That's a great point. That's unacceptable. I'm going to get engaged and correct that. Just say you're wrong. It takes the emotion out of it. If you're right, you can say, hey, man, it's unfortunate you feel that way. But I would like to point, when I gave you that date, we had this deadline. I had this customer's great. We're not having a problem. But I called one of my customers last year and I said, hey, man, we have got to get our cabinets designed and on a calendar. 2022 is going to be busier than 2021. There's no signs this thing's slowing down. I need to be on the calendar for a fabricator next year. If you want to think about getting in 2023, I have to order these cabinets by the end of 2021. It's April and we haven't ordered them. So, we didn't drop the ball. It's, the designer that's involved just hasn't produced the required information to place the order. Well, if we were having a conversation about timeline or move-in dates, I would say, hey, let's go back and look at the record. Well, here's where we missed a deadline by 4 months. So, you can utilize some of your technologies to kind of communicate for you. Sometimes we'll just go into co-construct and wind up the estimated days to completion. Somebody goes, they get that alert that we've changed the completion date and they go, oh, what's going on? You say, well, it can be for any reason. It can be that they missed a deadline. They didn't pay an invoice, whatever, or, you gave them a task and they didn't complete and you can utilize your technology to communicate for you, but, keep your composure, man. I'll write down a few points I want to make, or I get prepared. I don't walk in cold and just think I'm going to wing it and handle it. But I try to have a calm, professional demeanor. I try to anticipate what I think the nature is of the conversation. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't know. If I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. If I'm not wrong, I try to, again, communicate in a way that connects some dots for them mentally, where we gain trust. We increase our relationship. It's not devastating the relationship, So I think both things can be achieved.
Yeah, it's really good advice, Brady. It's funny because there's a mentor of mine, Dave Clark, who I had on for my 100th episode, and having shadowed him and been around him in some of these high level meetings, and then also, just in business, right? There's people that drop the ball, there's people that miscommunicate, there's tough conversations that we all have to have, and it was interesting seeing him that I've never really seen him lose his cool, get emotional, as you mentioned. He was never angry. And what's interesting is even on the really, really hard conversations where, there was one where there was a long story short, an employee that had to be terminated on another division we have. And to see how he handled that, where he went in and it was just, hey, he was super, the person had done some things that weren't ethical. So there's, it was a heavy conversation, and he came in and it wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was just, hey, how's it going, Brady? How you doing? And it's very soft. We got into, the meat of it, and it was very non-confrontational, if you will. And I found that a lot of times, as we handle that, maybe a smile on our face or maybe just this, listen, we want to make sure we're listening, but we don't have to get emotional. And I know a lot of lawyers will recommend that. They say, hey, if you're, trying to get through a tough conversation, you don't have to sit here and be emotional about it. You can listen, you can repeat what they're saying. It doesn't mean you agree with them. But to your point, Brady, you come in prepared, you come with the facts, you stay to the point, and not let the emotions get the best of you.
Yeah, and there's a book, and I read this, gosh, probably 20 years ago. It's called Fierce Conversations. And I don't remember a lot about the book, but I'll remember one key. And you can ask a really difficult question. And when you, again, take the emotion or the judgment out of that question, it gives somebody space to answer it. And I'll give you an example. I was interviewing for a guy, owned some real estate offices at the time, and I was hiring a team leader. And I met this guy, and I called around, and I got 3 references, and all 3 people said negative. I really liked the guy. I liked him. But then I called and got some references, and I got 3 negative pieces of feedback. Now, we tend to assume there's truth, and there may have been truth there. But I said, hey, Lincoln, I just want to ask you. And the way I phrased it, my tone, I didn't say, hey, dude, man, you have a terrible, man, your reputation's terrible. That's kind of put some horsepower and some validity behind the feedback I got. I said, hey, Lincoln, man, we've had such a great time. I called a couple of people, and, I got to be honest with you. I got a couple of things. And gave him, I didn't assume that it was true, and I gave him some room to answer it. And I would say it really developed, it created trust. It created candor. I didn't go in, all gunslinging. And he actually had a really awesome answer. He said, hey, man, I've been in the same city my whole life. Some people know me from when I was an elementary school student, and I'm carrying baggage on something I did on the playgrounds. I've been in other businesses that weren't successful. I've had some successes. I have some failures. And I get judged by this whole body of work. In 30 years, I've lived in this same city. So he had a great answer, and we got through it. But I didn't interject that judgment, that emotion. I just gave him space to answer it, and he actually hit it out of the park. It was awesome for us to build it, because I kind of eliminated the emotion and the judgment and just gave him room to provide an answer.
It's amazing how much more successful conversation communication is when you aren't emotional, right? When you don't allow that, and it stays high level. I know you've brought up, the tenets of storytelling. What's that?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, Brad, and you unknowingly were a little bit a part of this journey. And I was listening to, I've got to know Aaron Witt. I heard him on your podcast. And then like 2 weeks later,
he moved to Nashville.
I get coffee, and I was like, wait a minute, there's a Build Witt truck. And I recognized him for the little pick on your thing. I was like, hey, you Aaron? He's like, yeah. I was like, hey, I'm a buddy of Brad's. I heard you on his podcast a couple weeks ago. He's like, yeah. I was like, what are you doing in Nashville? He's like, oh, I moved my business here. I just asked my employees, where do you want to move? We all moved here. So Aaron, as you know, is a remarkably intelligent guy.
Right.
And Aaron said, hey, I'm not a photographer. I don't have any photography credentials. I'm a storyteller. I'm trying to bring storytelling to the excavation industry, because nobody wants to go drive dump trucks and heavy iron. But the old guys who've been running these businesses for 50 years have no clue, and they can't attract talent. And so it's just kind of burned in the back of my head, storytelling. And I had heard, somebody had shared with me sometime, and it really wasn't that interesting to me at the time, that we have a business leader in our market that has a company called Story Brand. And so like, sometimes I'll just hear key words and my mind will go, wait, what? I keep story. And even in my personal life, in my friend group, like, I'm the storyteller. I'm the guy that, tells all of the great things that we did with hyperbole and makes it a little bit more fun and a little more fantastical. So, well, wait a minute, storytelling. Well, first of all, I don't mean storytelling in the nature of traditional storytelling, in that we go, how did you get to construction? Well, let me take you back to the 1800s. My great grandfather. That's not what I'm talking about. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about. So good stories, they have characters, they have heroes, they have villains, they have guides, they have stakes, right? And so anytime you see a great movie, all these characters, I think, this goes way back in time. There's maybe 6 general premises to stories that go all the way back to like Aristotle. I mean, these things are the guy here in Nashville, Don Miller, who's, I think, the Jedi of this idea of storytelling as it pertains to reaching out to your customers. He's just so gifted, but he didn't invent it. These tenets of storytelling are centuries old. And so what we do wrong as builders, I think we do it the worst. I think everybody does it, but I think we do it the worst, which is, in this story that we're trying to project to our customers, we're the hero. But in traditional tenets of storytelling, heroes are weak. The strong person in a great story is the guide. Luke Skywalker's weak. right? Luke Skywalker, he doesn't know if he can tap into the Force. He doesn't. Yoda's strong, or So again, fantastical movie. How's that pronate? But this person serves as the guide who leads the ultimate hero. Right, the end of the great movie is Luke destroying the Death Star because he tapped into the Force. He found his energy. He's the hero of the story because he got the information. He was guided by this powerful figure who had the information to solve his problems. And when we're communicating to our customers, we need to be doing it the same way that any great story is crafted. I'll give you a couple of bad examples. And I'm not great at this, Brad. This has been a journey. Like, I'm super passionate about it, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm great at it. I'd love to take some time off and just master this because I think it's the way. When I heard this, I was like, man, this guy's right. This isn't only good, it's truth. It's like how it is. And so I'll give you a couple examples. We want to be the hero. So we say these things, 150 years of combined experience. What does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. Like, does that solve anybody's problems? 150 years experience. Premier builder, Nashville's premier custom home builder. Well, when you ask somebody, hey, like, what problem do you have? I'm trying to hire Premier. Like, is people searching for, when people are they getting out their Google, or are they going, I need somebody who's more prestigious? No, they're looking for a guide. So if you said, hey, what do you do? I build custom single family homes in North Scottsdale. I have a problem. I need to find somebody that builds single family homes in North Scottsdale. Right? So you want to be the guide, and then by affiliating with you, they get to be the hero. So, and you can pull this up. You can look up anything Don Miller does because the guy's brilliant, but you can go to mystorybrand.com and he's got this free brand script, and it's awesome, Brad. You'll just love it. Go do this. Everybody who's listening, if you're a builder, you're a tradesperson, whatever business you own, do this. So you fill out this thing, and it's like this giant Mad Lib. And and he's got these accompanying videos, so it makes it really easy for you. But you identify a character. What does the character want? Right? So what does the character want? Who are the villains? Maybe the villains are unqualified or unscrupulous builders in the Scottsdale area. So you want to identify the builders. Identify some stakes. They meet a guide, Brad Levitt, the king of Silverleaf and North Scottsdale. He has empathy about the problem that they're trying to solve. He has authority and expertise to solve that problem. He identifies the process, right? I'm going to have a pre-construction agreement. I'm having a budget meeting. We're going to go through a build cycle that ends in success at the end of the day. So you're starting a story loop for this person. It's not the story of Grandpappy and the still back in the 1800s and the moon. It's using your communication to open a story loop that ends in success with you, Brad Levitt, or Ashley Levitt and her design business, serving as the guide. You're the guide. But we all want to be the hero. And we tell people that things that they're meaningless, they don't solve problems, and people filter them out. One of the great, powerful examples that he uses, and I'm not trying to be political. This is a really easy thing to understand about how people want to solve their problems. Your customers aren't here to build the prestige of AFT construction. AFT is here to solve your customers' problems. So in the political arena, it was very clear, and Don shares this as one of his great examples, and I thought it was really awesome. He said, what was Donald Trump going to do? And everybody knows because it was such, he's going to make America great again. Make America great again. Make America great again. Okay. Everybody knows it, whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, no problem. But we all knew very concisely what he wanted to do. Well, what did Hillary Clinton want to do? Her slogan was, I'm with her. Well, the constituency isn't there to help her reach her aspirational goals of being the president. He said this might have been a way to speak to the needs of her constituency if she just could have altered her political message to say, she's with me. Think of the change in power. She's saying, I'm not the hero, I'm the guide. Hey, constituents that are I can appeal to, I'm here to help you solve your economic, social, political problems. I'm here to help you reach your aspirations. So I think we misidentify. We think we want to be the hero, but the hero is weak. The guide is the one that's powerful, and is the more skillful that you get as presenting yourself as the guide, the more successful you're going to be. Tune into Don Miller a little bit. He'd be a great guest for the podcast if you could get him. The guy's just so wise, but he talks in these brand scripts. But I think I didn't finish that story. If you go to his and fill out this, you identify these characters. It's like this gigantic Mad Lib. And you read it and you're like a lot of the dialogue's all already in there. You're just plopping in these and you're like, holy cow, that's amazing. I'll tell you, you and I both know him. So I'll bring this up to you. I'll tell you somebody who does this really well. Cause I'm not great at, I love it, but I don't feel like I'm great at it. Sean Van Dyke talks in brand scripts. If you see Sean Van Dyke promoting his what's his academy? The
Better Built Academy.
Sean,
Build Better Academy or Better Built Academy?
The Built to Build Academy.
Yeah.
Built to Build Academy, I believe. Sorry, Sean. Sean's awesome. Sean follows Don Miller. When you see Sean do one of his promos, the first thing he does is identify the problem. Hey, you're not getting paid enough. So he's identifying the problem, creating some stakes, and then he says, hey, man, I'm the guide. Then he creates some scarcity. Again, he's selling. He's not just consulting. He's going, hey, man, go ahead and get on the list. Get a pre-sale. There's some scarcity involved. And I'm going to help you reach your aspiration of being a more profitable contractor. And I know Sean, because, again, we're friends. I know he's modeled that from Don Miller. And it's just so powerful, and it's something that all of us can use, because Don likes to say, people, they want to survive. And so as you communicate to them, they're immediately filtering out the nonsense, but they're hanging on to the part, and you can just keep it simple, speak to their needs, present yourself as the solution.
And it's interesting, Brady. I've never heard the term the guide, right? You want to be the guide, but you think about how important that is. I mean, when you talk about the tenets of storytelling, right? But the key to marketing is an emotional connection. What's that emotional journey? You got to create the emotional journey. That's what attracts people to your business, right? And I've talked about this before. Brian Harris, who's one of my clients, I've had him on the podcast. He does veneers. He's tremendously successful. And I feel he's nailed the emotional journey better than anyone I've ever met. And what he does is he shows somebody who didn't want to smile at a wedding or a birthday or been self-conscious. They buy their plane ticket. He shows them flying to Phoenix. They do they come into his lobby and there's a big sign that says building confidence, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go through it, they get their veneers, and then he shows them with this huge smile and radiant smile. And now they're so confident. It's totally changed their appearance. They're at weddings, they're at birthdays, and now they're so confident. And so this emotional connection where it's like, I want that. I want this confidence. I want to have this. And but that's just the marketing side. But to your point, Brady, what I've never thought the guide from the builder side is that, how many times do we hear people say, well, the client didn't make the decision. So we're framing and, when should they make the selections? Well, why are we waiting to this point? Like, you're the guide. You need to set, the client doesn't understand the build process. We do. Mm-hmm. They may be excited. Hey, let's hurry and demo this house on a remodel. Well, let's wait. Let's wait to demo until we've selected cabinetry and finishes, because our job is to guide you through this to make this a pleasurable experience, right? 7 marriages, one house at a time, in lieu of let's just throw time or money at it, right? And so
you can be the guide and say, hey, you know what? Let's not focus on the start date. I know everybody wants to talk about the start date. Let's talk about the finish date. And that's a great conversation as a guide. But the illustration you gave your friend that does the veneers, think about it. He's the guide. Now, what if his marketing pitch was Scottsdale's #1 veneer provider? Isn't that a different, is somebody going, hey man, what problem are you trying to solve? I'm trying to solve my problem of the #1. It doesn't feel more emotions. So right. a great thing. It's got a story loop. It's got the person who's their stakes. It's this insecurity that we all feel when we don't feel good about our appearance. And how do I do it? Who has the tools to do it? And then it ends in victory, not for him, for the client.
Yeah.
And you said the client at the wedding reception, doing the electric slide, grinning from ear to ear. That's the victory. And that's what they want. They're not here to help him reach, hey, I'm the number 2. I'm trying to get to number 1. Who cares?
I love it, Brady. Electric slide. You know, the funny thing is, so we're going to reschedule session 2 because I think through our hour here, we got through like three points. That's it, because, you know, there's so much valuable content you shared. And so, you know, outside of the building side, well, I mean, yeah. So outside the building side, which consumes us, what do you do for fun?
I'm a diehard Preds fan. Yossi for Norris, Tanner Jeannot for Calder, UC Saros for Vezina Trophy. We're going to the playoffs. Sorry, I know the Coyotes. I don't know if you're a big fan, but they're bottom of the barrel this year.
They are bottom of the barrel.
I love the Preds. We have a lake house, so
what's hockey?
This year, I spend time at the lake with family and friends. Those are probably my two big passions. But I'm just a huge Preds fan, and you know, watch every game that I can attend, and I like to spend time at the lake with my wife, kids, and we usually have other families with us. I like to play golf. It's a torturous sport, Brad.
It is a torturous sport.
It's torturous. I tell people, just don't start, because then you won't be able to stop. And it, you know.
And then there comes a point like where I am now where you forget how to play. And I'm like, I don't even know how to play anymore. I don't know what happened. So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. But that's really important, Brad, because one of the things I want to tell your builders, particularly the ones that are a little bit younger, let these businesses fund your life. Don't let them be your life. I have 2 kids in college. My youngest is a junior in high school. I missed so many things. I missed spring breaks. You know, our kind of plan when I was younger was my wife would go on vacation with the kids, and then I would fly in the day before to drive them back. Guys, organize these businesses, organize your commitments. If your kids aren't in school or it's an important date, be there like 100% of the time. Be there 100% of the time. Let your clients know when you start a project. Brad, you have 5 or 6 kids?
6.
6 kids. Hey, man, I got 6 kids. So I have baseball, I have football, I have proms. I'm a very engaged parent, you know, and just identify some of your boundaries. People honestly respect them. Again, elevates you as a professional. But any of you people that go, man, I want to be doing what Brad and Brady are doing to get these bigger projects and more budgets, and I'm going to miss everything in my kids' childhood to get there. Don't do it. Don't do it.
That's amazing advice. I mean,
fund your work, fund your life, not be your life.
Fund your life, not be your life. I mean, what a better way to close. So where can our listeners find you?
Well, I'm on, you know, social media. I'm on Instagram, Fry Classic Construction. I'm on LinkedIn at the insistence of Aaron, you know, let your podcast go, man, you're missing out. Get on LinkedIn. So, you know, I'm on those. I have a website, fryclassicconstruction.com. Send me a message if you're a young builder, old builder, anything I said resonated with you and you need a little bit more information. I really do have a passion for helping people. You know, all of us are going to feel some pain in this business. It's kind of the nature of it. But if I can help some people, you know, avoid some of the ones that I stepped in, you know, I'd be glad to help. I like to see people succeed. I like to see people, you know, build great families, great businesses, take great vacations because they built a great business. And so, you know, if there's ever a next career for me, Brad, that's probably what's going to be, is somehow trying to help some of these guys just, you know, achieve their dreams inside the construction industry.
Well, I can be a witness to that. I mean, I've known you for quite some time. You've been a great mentor. And not only that, I've seen your product. It's top notch, amazing stuff in Nashville. Brady does an incredible job. So Brady, can't thank you enough, man. You've been amazing.
My pleasure, Brad. Glad to be here.